Well, welcome to another episode of Traveling Through History. Tonight, we're going to be starting a new series, the Seven Wonders series. And in the Seven Wonders series, this first episode, we're going to be talking about the seven wonders of the ancient world. And we'll go into all the history and all the background behind all these different seven wonders. There's actually only one of the seven wonders that's left. All the other six have faded through history or been destroyed in some period of human history, which is really unfortunate. But as you can imagine, all of them are really fascinating and have a fascinating history of their own. And we'll go into all of those tonight. In a future episode, we'll be talking about the seven wonders of the Middle Ages. And then the third part of this series will be the seven wonders of the modern world. And so we're going to go through all seven wonders in each of these different phases of history. So let's go ahead and talk about the seven wonders of the ancient world. The amazing works of art and architecture known as the seven wonders of the ancient world serve as a testament to the ingenuity, the imagination, and sheer hard work of human beings that they're capable of. They're also, however, reminders of human capacity for disagreement, destruction, war, and possibly even embellishment. As soon as ancient writers compiled a list of the seven wonders of the ancient world, it became fodder for debate over which achievements deserved inclusion on this list. The original list comes from a work by Philo of Byzantium, written in 225 BC, called The Seven Wonders in his actual story. Ultimately, human hands joined with natural forces to destroy all of the seven wonders except for one. Furthermore, it's possible that at least one of the seven wonders might not have existed at all. Still, all seven continue to inspire and be celebrated as the remarkable products of creativity and skill of the Earth's early civilizations. So let's talk about the first of those seven wonders, and you can see it here to my top right, and that is the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. The Great Pyramid, located at Giza on the west bank of the Nile River north of Cairo in Egypt, is the only wonder of the ancient world that has survived to the present day. It's part of a group of three pyramids, Khufu, which is the Cheops, Khafra, which is the Chephren, and Menkaure, which is the Mycerinus, that were built between 2700 BC and 2500 BC as royal tombs. The largest and most impressive is Khufu, which sits in the middle between the three. It's also known as the Great Pyramid, and it covers 13 total acres. It is believed to contain more than 2 million stone blocks that weigh from 2 to 30 tons each. For more than 4,000 years, Khufu reigned as the tallest building in the world. In fact, it took modern man until the 19th century to build a taller structure. Amazingly, the nearly symmetrical Egyptian pyramids were built without the aid of modern tools or surveying equipment. So how did the Egyptians build these pyramids and do this incredible engineering marvel? Scientists believe that Egyptians used log rollers and sledges to move the stones into place. The sloped walls, which were intended to mimic the rays of Ra, or their sun god, were originally built as steps and then filled in with limestone. The interior of the pyramids included narrow corridors and hidden chambers in an unsuccessful attempt to foil grave robbers at the time. Although modern archaeologists have found some great treasures among the ruins in the last 200 years, they believe most of what the pyramids once contained were looted within the first 250 years of their completion, or BC. So pretty incredible. Most of everything was looted way back then when the pyramids were built. Did you know that these pyramids were actually inspired by the Colossus of Rhodes as one of the inspirations? In addition, the Colossus of Rhodes was an inspiration for the Statue of Liberty, which is here in the United States today. So very interesting there about the Great Pyramid of Giza. I've actually been there. It's a fantastic visit. If you ever get a chance to go see the Sphinx and the three pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid, definitely worth your time to go check it out. It's an incredible place and an incredible marvel to see. Let's move on to the next, number 2 of the seven wonders, and that's the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which are in Iraq. According to ancient Greek poets, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were built near the Euphrates River in modern-day Iraq by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II around 600 BC. The gardens were said to have been planted as high as 75 feet in the air on a huge square black terrace and was laid out in steps like a theater. The king allegedly built the towering gardens to ease his lover Amatis's homesickness for the natural beauty of her home in Madaya, the northwestern part of modern-day Iran. Later, writers described how people would walk underneath the beautiful gardens, which rested on tall stone columns and could look at all different levels of the gardens at the same time. Modern scientists have deduced that for the gardens to survive, they would have had to be irrigated using a system containing of a pump, a water wheel, cisterns to carry water from the Euphrates River many feet into the air to liquefy the gardens. Though there were multiple accounts of the gardens in both Greek and Roman literature, none of them are firsthand, and the mention of the gardens was never found in any of the Babylonian cuneiform inscriptions. As a result, most modern scholars believe the existence of the gardens was in part inspired and widely believed, but still a fictional tale. So this is the one of the seven wonders that scientists are not totally sure actually existed, and there's no physical evidence that it did. But still very interesting that they spoke about it many times in literature. Let's go to number 3 of the seven wonders of the ancient world, and that is the Statue of Zeus at Olympia, and this is in Greece. The famed statue of Zeus, the king of the gods in Greek mythology, was crafted by the Athenian sculptor Pheidias and completed and placed in the temple of Zeus in Olympia, site where the ancient Olympics around the mid-6th century BC were held. The statue depicted the god of thunder seated bare-chested in a wooden throne. Holding up the throne's armrests were two curved sphinxes, mythical creatures which had a head and a chest of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of a bird. The statue of Zeus was richly decorated with gold and ivory. At 40 feet, it was so tall that its head nearly touched the top of the temple. According to legend, the sculptor Pheidias asked Zeus for a sign for his approval after finishing the statue, and soon thereafter the temple was struck by lightning. Zeus' statue graced the temple at Olympia for more than 8 centuries before Christian priests persuaded the Roman emperor to close the temple in the 4th century AD. At that time, the statue was moved to a temple in Constantinople, where it is believed to have been destroyed in a fire in the year 462 AD. So very sad that there's pretty good evidence that this statue existed for over 800 years, however, eventually was destroyed at the hands of a fire. Pretty incredible statue there. Let's go to number 4 on this list, and that is the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, which is also in Greece. There was actually more than one temple of Artemis. A series of several altars and temples were destroyed and then restored on the same site in Ephesus, which is the Greek port city on the west coast of modern-day Turkey. The most fabulous of these structures were 2 marble temples built around 550 BC and 350 BC, respectively. Apart from Olympus, the sun never looked on anything so grand as the Temple of Artemis, said writer Antipater of Sidon. The original Temple of Artemis was designed by Cretan architect Christophorion and his son Metagenes, and decorated by some of the most celebrated artists of the ancient world at the time. The building burned on July 21st, 356 BC, according to legend, the same night that Alexander the Great was actually born. It was torched by a Greek citizen named Herostratus, who claimed he burned the marvel so that his name would be known to history. He was put to death, and the government declared it illegal to utter his name at the time. So you can imagine he was given the death penalty and also given the disgrace of never having his name uttered in public again. About 6 years later, after the burning, the building of a new temple of Artemis was begun. The new building was surrounded by marble steps that led to more than a 400-foot-long terrace. Inside stood 127 60-foot marble columns and the statue of Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt. Archaeologists disagree as to whether the building had an open-air ceiling or was topped with wooden tiles. The temple was largely destroyed by Ostrogoths in 262 AD, and it was not until the 1860s, which is not that long ago, that archaeologists dug up the first of the ruins of the temple's columns at the bottom of the Katstar River. So pretty incredible that they actually found the columns to this incredible temple to Artemis. Let's go to number 5 on the list. That's Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, located in what is now southeastern Turkey. The mausoleum was a tomb built by Artemisia for her husband Mausolus, the king of Carnia in Asia Minor, after his death in 353 BC. Mausolus was also Artemisa's brother, and according to legend, she was so grief-stricken at his passing that she mixed his ashes with water and drank them, in addition to ordering the mausoleum's construction. The massive mausoleum was made entirely of white marble and is thought to have been around 135 feet high. The building's complicated design, consisting of 3 rectangular layers, may have been an attempt to reconcile Lycian, Greek, and Egyptian architectural styles. The first layer was a 60-foot base of steps, followed by a middle layer of 36 Ionic columns and a steeped, pyramid-shaped roof. At the very top of the roof lay the tomb, decorated by the work of 4 sculptors, and a 20-foot marble rendition of 4 horse chariots. The mausoleum was largely destroyed in an earthquake in the 13th century, and its remains were later used in the fortification of a castle. In 1846, pieces of one of the mausoleum's friezes were extracted from the castle and now reside along with other relics from the Halicarnassus site in London's British Museum. So pretty incredible that they have found pieces of the mausoleum, both columns and other pieces from this tomb that was built. And pieces of it are now both in Greece at the site and also in the London Museum. You can actually go see it today. So pretty incredible structure there. Let's go to number 6. That's the very famous Colossus of Rhodes. The Colossus of Rhodes was an enormous bronze sculpture of the sun god, Helios, built by the Rhodians over 12 years in the 3rd century BC. The city was the target of the Macedonian siege early in the 4th century BC, and according to legend, the Rhodians sold the tools and equipment left behind by the Macedonians to pay for the Colossus. Designed by the sculptor Charles, this statue was, at 100 feet, the tallest in the ancient world. It was completed around 280 BC and stood for 60 years until it was toppled in an earthquake, and it was never rebuilt. Hundreds of years later, Arabs invaded Rhodes and sold the remains of the statue as scrap metal. Because of this, archaeologists do not know how much of the exact location of the statue or what it looked like. Most believe that it depicted the sun god standing naked while he lifted a torch with one hand and held a spear in the other. It was once believed that the statue stood with one leg on each side of the harbor, but most scholars now agree that the statue's legs were most likely built close together to support its immense weight. So as you can see, they're not fully sure where it was placed. They know it was at the harbor. They don't know if the legs were apart or together, and they don't know exactly the height. They're guessing 100 feet at this point, but pretty clear that the Colossus of Rhodes was the greatest of all of the statues at the time in the ancient world. And as we said earlier, Colossus of Rhodes was also an inspiration for our Statue of Liberty. So what a cool structure there in Greece in the Colossus of Rhodes. Let's go to number 7, and that is the Lighthouse of Alexandria in Egypt. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was located on a small island called Pharos, near the city of Alexandria in Egypt. Designed by the Greek architect Sostratos and completed around 270 BC during the reign of Ptolemy II, the lighthouse helped to guide the Nile River ships in and out of the city's busy harbor. Archaeologists have found ancient coins on which the lighthouse was depicted, and from them deduced that the structure had 3 tiers to it: a square level at the bottom, an octagonal level in the middle, and a cylindrical level on top. Above stood the 16-foot statue, most likely of Ptolemy II or Alexander the Great, for whom the city was named, although estimates of the lighthouse's height have ranged from 200 to 600 feet. Most modern historians believe it was about 380 feet tall. The lighthouse was gradually destroyed during a series of earthquakes from 956 to 1323 BC. Some of its remains have since been discovered at the bottom of the Nile, and they're still discovering pieces of this lighthouse today. So pretty incredible that all these thousands of years later, we're still looking for pieces of this lighthouse and still trying to find out history behind it. What an incredible structure, and really the first lighthouse in world history, of which many, many lighthouses ever since have been modeled. So let's go ahead and take a look at a short video about each of these 7 marvels and wonders of the ancient world.
We often hear the phrase that there are 7 wonders of the world, but these lists have changed throughout time. We're going to begin with the 7 wonders of the ancient world, followed next week by the 7 wonders of the Middle Ages, then leading to the 7 wonders of the modern era, which is a much more engineering and innovation-focused list. But let's start at the beginning. This list was believed to be created around the 1st century, as the first tourists began to really explore Greece and Egypt and the rest of the Mediterranean. So this list is geographically confined to that area. They also existed in a pretty wide range of time, with only 60 years that all 7 of them supposedly existed at the same time, if they all existed at all. We'll get to that later. Let's begin with the only one of these wonders to still exist today, the Great Pyramid of Giza. While there are a few pyramids in Egypt, the largest pyramid belongs to the pharaoh Khufu, and this pyramid was singled out as a sight to see. It was supposedly built around 2560 BC, surviving today for a momentous 4,000-year-plus lifespan. For almost 3,800 of those years, it was the tallest man-made structure on Earth, until modern engineering allowed skyscrapers to exist. We're still unsure how this pyramid was built, and it's debated if slave labor was used or if skilled craftsmen were recruited. Either way, totaling an average workforce of 14,000 people at a time, over the course of 10 years. It's also debated if this pyramid was meant to be a tomb or not, as Khufu's remains were never found. Some believe an elaborate, undiscovered room in the pyramid may still hold his body, but only time and slow, meticulous investigation will tell. Our second wonder is also in Egypt, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. This lighthouse was created under the reign of Ptolemy I and Ptolemy II, taking about 12 years to build. This lighthouse had a giant furnace at the top, becoming the first of its kind and the model for all future lighthouses, used to guide ships into a harbor at night. It was destroyed over time by several earthquakes, which slowly caused the lighthouse to crumble into the sea. The fort was built over the lighthouse's ruins, so it wasn't able to be studied or examined until only recently, but most of the remains are still underwater. Our next wonder takes us away from Egypt and now to Greece, where we have the Colossus of Rhodes. The city of Rhodes is a harbor city, and the giant Colossus was built in honor of the Greek god Helios. They built the statue to celebrate victory for defending their city against an attack. The statue was said to be as tall as the Statue of Liberty, and the pose of the statue is hotly debated, with the current belief that it couldn't have actually straddled the opening of the harbor as it's shown in most pictures, but it likely stood to one side. Building the statue in the center of the harbor would have closed the actual harbor to traffic, and that seems unlikely, or so experts believe. It only stood for about 50 or 60 years, before a massive earthquake caused it to snap at the knees and fall onto the city. For a long time, people still traveled to see its ruins, but eventually most of the bronze used to make it was melted down and sold, so there's no evidence left in Rhodes of the statue. We now move on to the Statue of Zeus, which is located in the city of Olympia in Greece. This giant statue was made out of wood, but then covered in gold and precious metals. Zeus was the highest of the gods, so it was only fitting to build the statue in the largest temple to him. Eventually, the Roman emperors that took over control of the temple forbid worship of quote-unquote pagan gods, so the temple was abandoned and the statue crumbled. Earthquakes and fires helped to expedite this process. Some theories point to the statue being torn apart and taken to sell, since little to no evidence of the statue remains. Our last Greek site is the Temple of Artemis, located in an area called Ephesus, which now falls into the geography of modern-day Turkey. This temple was built to worship the goddess of the hunt, Artemis, and there's a theory that the Greek Amazons had a major role in building this temple to their patron goddess. This temple was destroyed and rebuilt many times, by fires and floods and earthquakes. It was rediscovered and excavated in the mid-1800s. The site is now commemorated by a single column that's been built from discovered pieces from the wreckage. The next wonder is also in Turkey, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. This wonder stems from the ruler named Mausolus, who wanted to build a city beautiful and intricate, so he transformed the city of Halicarnassus into a sight to behold. He died relatively young, though he had planned for this with an elaborate tomb and surrounding architecture. This tomb looked down over the city and included a stairway flanked by statues. At the time, it looked much more like a temple than a tomb. Tombs like this today, usually large rooms that hold a coffin, are called mausoleums after him. It was destroyed when Catholic knights took over the city and built Bodrum Castle, using the mausoleum's bricks to fortify it. Following this, the rest of the treasures and even the body of Mausolus and his wife went missing. You can visit this castle now and likely spot bricks and pieces that are from the old mausoleum. You can also see the spot where the mausoleum used to sit. Our last wonder is the only wonder that there is no physical evidence of. It may not have even existed at all. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The ancient city of Babylon existed in what is now called Iraq, and it's said to have featured a garden, with tiers upon tiers of hanging flowers that pour down into it. What we're seeing on the screen is either what they believe this garden looked like, or gardens that have been inspired by it. The leading theory as to who created these gardens leads to Nebuchadnezzar II, who likely built them for his wife. There is an opposing theory that these gardens never existed in Babylon, but instead were built by an Assyrian king in the city of Nineveh. There are many references in ancient texts that discuss this Assyrian garden that line up with what we imagine.
So as you can see, a lot of things to discuss in that video. You can imagine how incredible these seven wonders of the ancient world were, how large, how difficult to build, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, where you had 14,000 people working, mostly slaves, working for a total of 10 years to build that one structure. And all the structures around it, of course, took many, many years as well. So something that huge and difficult to build was truly a marvel of the ancient world. And really all the structures we reviewed in the Seven Wonders were really incredible in their own way, whether it was the Statue of Zeus, which was so large that it could be as much as 50 people high. The different structures, you saw the Mausoleum, of course, the Colossus of Rhodes, the largest statue that had ever been built at that time. And so really this list of seven wonders, hopefully you enjoyed learning about them and realize how incredible the work was done to create these structures and to maintain them at that time, where they did not have any modern tools or any modern ways to create or build these structures. Really amazing to think about what they were able to achieve. Hopefully you'll want to learn a little bit more about these incredible wonders of the ancient world. Each individual one has its own history and its own incredible story that brought it about and made it one of the more incredible structures in human history. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and hopefully you love history as much as we do. This again was our first episode of this series, the Seven Wonders series. Please be looking for our next episode, which will be on the Seven Wonders of the Middle Ages. And we'll go through all those in detail as well. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time on Traveling Through History. Have a good night.